All right, we're going to be talking about linear equations this unit, more so kind of the applications of linear equations. So we're going to review today kind of the basics of how to write equations and kind of work with them overall. So this should be a review, but we want to kind of go through it just so that we're aware since it's been a minute. So we're going to talk about the slope is represented by that formula. Again, it's not going to be given to you, but the slope between 2 points. So we have x1, y1, and x2, y2. And we're going to do change in y over change in x. If we're on a graph, we can say rise over run, kind of work from there. But pretty much the majority of the time you're going to be able to use this equation. So we have 2, -1, and -5, 3. So that's going to be our x1 and our y1. And this is going to be our x2 and our y2. So then we can find our slope by saying 3 minus -1 over -5 minus 2. And just be careful with your signs. So 3 minus -1 is really 3 plus 1. So that gives us 4. And then -5 minus 2 is -7. So our slope would be -4/7. Okay, and you put that negative really wherever you want overall. All right, if we look at the three forms of linear equations, we're predominantly going to use 1 and 2, but 3 does work as well. So it just depends on what you're dealing with overall. But for the most part, we're going to use point slope form. So we're going to be given a point and a slope, and then we can plug into that. And then you can distribute and simplify to get into slope intercept form. Unless you are given specifically the y-intercept, then you're probably going to need to use point slope first. Okay? Or you may need to use a slope formula and then kind of work from there. So if we have these two where we have, and the instructions say to use point slope form first and then convert to slope intercept form. So we're given the slope is -3, and we're given that the point is 4, 8. So for point slope form, we're going to have y minus 8 is equal to -3 times x minus 4. So that's point slope form. So if we were just writing point slope, that's what it would be. We need to distribute out. And so we'll say y minus 8 is -3x plus 12. And then from there, we'll move our 8 over slope intercept. You want to like solve for y. That's kind of the trick to think about it. Point slope, you want to leave the parentheses. So we'll move the 8 over, so it'll be plus 20. Okay, so that would be, the red part would be in point slope. The green part, the bottom part, is in slope intercept. If we look at the next one, so there's passing through 3, 4, and 0, -3. So in order to write any equation, unless we're in standard form, which we can't go directly to based off of this, we need to find our slope first. So our slope, what we found on the previous page, is -3 minus 4 over 0 minus 3. And so then we'll end up with -7 over -3, which just gives us +7 over 3. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can go to point slope form, so that's what they tell us to do. So I'm going to use that first point, but we should also notice that this is our y-intercept, so we could jump straight to slope intercept form from there. But since they say use point slope, we're going to use that. So we're going to say y minus 4 is equal to 7 over 3 times x minus 3. Okay, so that's point slope form. We need to distribute out, and so we'll have y minus 4 is equal to 7 over 3x. And then 7/3 times -3, that's -21 over 3, which is -7. And then we can add our 4 to the other side, so we'll get y equals 7/3 and x minus 3, which again should match up with what we have for our y-intercept. So this is our slope intercept, and this would be our point slope. And you could use either one for point slope. You'll end up in the same problem overall. Okay, so we need to be able to write both of those given different scenarios. Those aren't the only two scenarios, but we can pretty much cover everything after that. Okay, so I'm going to let you work on these two. So you can pause the video and then work through it. Make sure that you both have point slope and slope intercept form. So we should end up with this. So point slope form, the first one is that first line. Slope intercept is the second line. That's 11 over, that should be 11 over 2, not 11 over 3. So that should be 11 over 2. And again, you can work through those and use either point. Does not matter which one. All right. Other things that we need to know about are parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel lines are lines that have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocals. So we need to have that it's the opposite sign and the fraction is flipped. So looking at these as some examples. So for this first one up here, we have that m is 1/2. And here we have m equals 2. So those are reciprocals, but they are not opposite. So then in this case, we would say that these are neither. Both of these happen to be in slope-intercept form, so we can just automatically get the slope from there. In this next one, we can see that's x minus 5y. So we need to solve for that. So we're going to move the x over. And then divide by -5. So we'll get positive 1/5. I don't really care about the 2, but it would be -2/5. But we care about that this slope is -5 and this slope is positive 1/5. Those are both opposite because one's positive, one's negative, and they're the reciprocal, so those are perpendicular. Okay, and then in the last one, we have to solve for both y's. So we can, x minus 2y, we can move that x over, so we can say minus 2y is equal to -x plus 1. That's a 1. And then we can say y equals negative divided by negative is positive, so we're going to say 1/2 x, and that would be minus 1/2. And then in our separate equation, the 2x minus 4y, we can move the 2x over, so we have negative 4y is equal to negative 2x plus 3. That's kind of cut off, but it's 2x plus 3. Again, I don't really care about the 3 at this point, but we'll have y equals 2 divided by -4. Sorry, that should be flipped around. All right, so we should have 2x on the other side, so that should be negative 4y is equal to negative 2x plus 3. And then when we divide, we'll get y equals 1/2 x. And then, again, your y-intercept doesn't impact whether it's parallel or perpendicular. So we have 1/2 and 1/2, so those would be parallel lines. Okay, so if you don't have y by itself, you do need to solve for y. All right, last few things is talking about x and y intercepts. So we want to be able to find both of those, which we have done quite a bit. X-intercept wise, we want to plug in 0 for y. So we can say 0 equals negative 2x plus 8, and then we can solve from there. We can subtract 8, divide by -2, so that would be x equals 4. Now we want to write it as an ordered pair, so this would be 4, 0. That's our x-intercept. For our y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x. So we get y equals -2 times 0 plus 8. 2 times 0 is 0, so we're just going to get y equals 8. We'll have 0, 8. And again, you could tell that because we're in point slope form, or sorry, slope intercept form, so that would tell us that our y-intercept is, the y value of the y-intercept is 8. Okay, if we look at this next one, we're not in point slope, or we're not in slope intercept, so we need to actually plug in. So for x-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for y, so we'll get 5x minus 0 is equal to 10. And then we'll get 5x equals 10, so x is 2. So that means we get 2, 0. And then doing the same thing for our y-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for x, so 5 times 0. So we'll get negative y is equal to 10, so y is negative 10. So again, make sure we write it in proper notation, and we'll have 0, negative 10 for that. Okay, last idea is being able to find some word problems, and this is kind of really the extension for the remainder of the unit. But we can read through this. Basically, we have an online music store where all downloads cost the same. We have downloading 2 songs. The balance of his car was $18.10. After downloading 5 songs, the balance of his car was $15.25. We want to write a linear equation such that B of n is the total amount of money in the card, and n is the total number of songs. Okay, so it's important to understand what they're telling us to do. We want to write an equation of that form, right? So just make sure that you're answering the question that they're asking. They tell us downloading 2 songs, the balance of his card was $18.10. So we should know that n is the number of songs downloaded, so that means that we're going to have a ordered pair of 2, 18.10. And then after 5 songs, we have 15.25. Okay, and then from there, we're just using everything we've talked about previously. We need to find our slope. We're going to say 15.25 minus 18.10 over 5 minus 3. All right, so we can use a calculator to find that, and that is going to give us 15.25 minus 18.10 is negative 2.85 over, that should be 5 minus 2, not 3, over 3, which is going to give us negative 0.95. Okay, so that's our slope. We need to be able to find our equation based on what they have here. So we're going to make this a little bit bigger, space. All right, and so then we can use either one of these points. I'm going to use y minus 18.10 is equal to 2, is equal to negative 0.95 times x minus 2. And then we can distribute that out. We'll have y minus 18.10 is equal to negative 0.95x. And then that times 2 is going to be plus 1.90. So we can move our 18.10 over, and we're going to end up with y equals negative 0.95x plus 20. Technically, we should use the same format that they have, so we're going to say b sub n is equal to negative 0.95n plus 20. We do want to make sure that we use that. I kind of jumped to x's, but we want to be able to understand what they give us and then work from there. Okay, this next one, someone has gone to the gym a total of 5 months, spent a total of $104. Someone else has gone for a total of 8 months, and they spent $161 total was the cost per month. Okay, so we can answer this using what we know. So again, we don't really have a whole lot of information, but they're given total 5 months, spent a total of $104. So that's kind of like an x and y value. So we can say that that's 5, 104. And then we also have a data point of 8, 161. Okay, so there's probably some startup fee, which we don't know off the top of our heads, and we can't really work through it. We could find it. But what I would say is that the ongoing cost is the monthly cost. And so they're asking what's the total month cost. We can find our slope and then figure out from there. Okay, so we can say 161 minus 104 over 8 minus 5. So if we do 161, we're going to get 57 over 8 minus 5 is 3. And then we'll end up that is 19. So our rate that is changing or constantly being added is 19. So then we know that that answer per month is $19. Okay, so main idea is you got to kind of figure out what they're giving you and then approach the question that they're asking. So they're asking cost per month. We don't want to write the equation. You could do an equation and kind of work from there, but that's just going to give you extra stuff that we don't necessarily need. Okay, not every scenario given, but we'll continue working through this throughout this unit.